We are live. Welcome to the new show of You've Got Mail. Um, it's a pleasure to be broadcasting again every weekday at 4 p.m. Tel Aviv time, or almost every weekday. And during the next couple of weeks, I will be interviewing primarily myself, but then I will have some special guests during the month of September. And we will see where this takes us. It's all an experiment. Isn't life an experiment? Today I'm going to talk about create your fate. As That sounds like a bit of an oxymoron, and we will get there. I'll start out by recounting a conversation I had with Adar, my son. I learned a lot from my kids. And the question was, Dad, you've been trying to write a book about your life for several years, perhaps seven, and the take-home messages that you would like to share with us, your children, your students, young people. What is it all about? Are there three pillars on which you would like to build your edifice? This was my son's idea. I don't know if you can build a good edifice on three pillars, but I thought that if I wanted to summarize what I want to teach about life, it would be three pillars. The first pillar would be acquiring unexpected skills. The second would be recruiting your demons. Thank you to my sister Miriam for the recruiting your demons. And the third would be create your fate. And today I'm going to talk about the third pillar, creating your fate, with some examples from my life. And we will see how it goes. The first time I'm giving this talk, so you'll have to bear with me. It's a little bit complicated. Søren Kierkegaard said that we live our life forwards, but we tell it backwards. So of course, I'm telling my life backwards, the only way that we know. But there's two types of living your life forward. There's living your life forward by inertia, and there's living your life forward by decision and determination. I haven't always been a member of the second tribe, but on occasion I have. And today I'm going to talk about two ways where I created my own fate, by moving to Israel when I was 17 and by moving from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. But for me, it all starts in Ottawa, the city to which I arrived in 1953 when I was 1 year old. I didn't have much of a choice in the matter. My father had a job, and I grew up in that cold Canadian capital city. Recently, I've been thinking about Ottawa a lot. Next week, it'll be exactly 52 years since I left. And I'm in touch with a lot of strangers from Ottawa who belong to a Facebook group of kind people where you can post any question that you had about the 1950s, 1960s, 1910s. And there are people there who have connections and remember Ottawa, every nook and cranny. And they were able to solve two riddles of my youth, which I will talk about another time. I'm able now to communicate with people who stayed in Ottawa. And probably most of the kids I grew up with either stayed in Ottawa or stayed in Canada. They might have migrated to Toronto, but they still stayed in Canada. I left. So what is creating your fate? So we all have a fate that, at least to a certain extent, we don't determine. We don't know whether we will walk down a street and be hit by a car. But can we, to some extent, create our fate? Can we take major decisions that change the whole course of our lives? Well, I did this on at least two occasions. The first was coming to Israel on September the 7th, 1969, with 43 other young kids on a one-year program to the Kibbutz Urim in the Negev desert. It was only for a year. Now, what would have happened had I not gone, had I come back after 1 year to Ottawa? I did have two scholarships. One was to study chemical engineering at the University of Toronto. So I could have gone on to study something that I was not interested in at all. Perhaps ending up in Timmins, Ontario, Sudbury, North Bay, or Thornhill. Probably marrying a Jewish girl, maybe a redhead who would boss me around, go no. But one thing is pretty sure. I would be going to synagogue every Saturday and holidays and holy days and weddings and bar mitzvahs and what have you. I figured out that by coming to Israel, where I go to synagogue once a year, I saved 3,000 days at the synagogue just by living here. Oh, and a lot of snow shoveling. So when you change your life in a major way, you are creating your fate. Whatever happened to me from the age of 17 till the age of 69 was determined by that major decision to leave Canada for better, worse, richer, poorer, less religious, and to move to the Holy Land. As odd as that seems. Okay, but after the 1 year in the kibbutz, I decided to study chemistry in Jerusalem. Perhaps a lousy decision looking back, but it turned out okay in the end. But I was the worst chemistry student in the history of Hebrew University. Let's fast forward now, which of course I can do, to the mid-1990s. I'm a professor at Tel Aviv University. I've invented things. I'm well known. And I'm attending a conference, and the chief scientist is giving a talk. But I hear a familiar voice. I look at the face of the guy talking. Hey, that's no chief scientist. I mean, it is. But it's Shuki Gleitman, Dr. Shuki Gleitman, the guy I studied chemistry with in the 1970s. Shuki Gleitman. So, of course, at the intermission, I go over to say hello. Shuki recognizes me. It's only been 20 years. And he has this throng of about 15 admirers surrounding him. And he stops what he's saying and he says, everybody look at that guy, pointing to me. You see that guy? He's the professor now at Tel Aviv University, but 20 years ago, he was a bum. He was the worst student that ever walked the campus of Hebrew University. Hey, he blew up a laboratory in second year. He almost got thrown out a zillion times. Students came to measure his temperature when he sat in the library. Now, of course, all this was true. And the people looked at me as if to say, what's the world coming to? This bum turned into a university professor? Well, yes, both are true. In Jerusalem, I was a bum. I don't know why, perhaps because I was only 18, 19 years old, and this was my first time being completely independent because, of course, on a one-year program in a kibbutz, you're not independent. But here I was in charge of my own studies, my own laundry, my own cooking, where I lived, and I lived in very many places. It was hard coping, and the studies in Hebrew, and I didn't like chemistry. Because I'm a bit of a renegade, I was a bum. I would sit in the first in America like this in the face lecture, so he would know just how. And yes, I did blow up a laboratory in second year organic chemistry, for which I received the punishment of being disallowed from coming to laboratory for a month, which was just fine for me. As a kid, high school, I would repeat exams because I didn't think I should. I was a real, and here at university, I came the opposite. I barely pulled through. The passing grade in first year was 60. My average was 60. Second year, I improved it to 61. There's a story that I love to tell. The first time I did my physics exam in my sophomore year, this was all about a physics of quantum physics. And the first time I did the exam, I got 38. And I was sure that I had aced the exam. I thought I knew everything. This is a problem of people who don't know anything, who always think that they know more than they do. So I complained and I made a date to meet the professor who gave me a 38. And I said to him, "How dare you give me a 38? And he said, "You're right. I shouldn't have given you a 38. I should have given you a 37. But 37 at Hebrew University is 0, and I didn't want to give you a 0. But then he told me a secret, which explained why the studies had been so boring for 2 years. He said to me, "You know, all of the courses are just bored professors taking books in chemistry books in English and translating them into Hebrew. If you go to the library and you take out the original books in English, you can study by yourself," which I did. And I got a 90. So during the last year of my studies, I managed to improve. But my grades were so lousy graduating that who would take me? Almost nobody wanted to take me. There was one laboratory in Tel Aviv that wanted to interview me. I guess they were desperate for anybody. My marks were really bad. So the last week of September 1973, I got on a bus and drove to Tel Aviv. Now you have to understand, for people who lived in Jerusalem in the early 70s, that was a real come down. Tel Aviv was a small, hot, moist, terrible city with gray buildings and smog. And yet I took the bus to Tel Aviv, to this brand new campus in Ramat Aviv called Tel Aviv University. The campus was so bare that 2 years later I actually got hit by lightning wandering between buildings. Bare campus. And I had a meeting which I thought went rather well. And then Yom Kippur War broke out a week later. I didn't end up coming back to Jerusalem for 4 months. And when I came back, I decided that I am going to create my fate. I broke off almost all my ties with Jerusalem, my bumminess. I studied in earnest. I made up every course you can imagine, including the undergraduate courses, in order to get a sufficient mark to be accepted finally for my master's studies at Tel Aviv. And I worked in earnest for 2 years. Now, you might assume that I did well during my master's degree. I didn't really. But at least I discovered that I had the potential of pulling myself up from the bootstraps, or whatever the expression is, and creating my fate. And I guess that those were the major decisions I made as a professional, Because I stayed at Tel Aviv University ever since 1973. And even today, when I'm emeritus professor, I'm still there doing completely different things. So my life would have been completely different had I stayed in Canada. I chose to create my faith. I moved once to Israel, and then in 1973, I left my bum reputation in Jerusalem behind and decided to create a new faith in a city that I despised and detested, where I knew nobody, and to make a brand new start. In the future, You've Got Mel's, I'm going to talk about the other two pillars. I'm going to talk about learning the unexpected skills, which I really believe in as a way to succeed in this world. And the second, or the third pillar, if you will, which is recruiting your demons. So tomorrow we'll talk about either demons or learning the skills that you least expect to make use of during your career. Why don't you guys write to me with your questions? I'm here in Ramat Gan, broadcasting to the world, hoping somebody will either hire me, want me to give a talk, or to help them with their life skills. I have time on my hands, and I'm happy to help anybody, whether it's for money or for free. Just reach out to me. You have all my details here. And so, until tomorrow, you've got Mel.